Let's get into it. Sold Not For Sale podcast. Coach Colin here. Andrew Schultz, Joe Rogan, and leave it to Andrew Schultz to go in this unexpected direction and asking Joe Rogan what makes him proud to be American. And it turns into this conversation about American pride and how great the country is. And I think it's always so great to hear a conversation like that. So many times when I make the Trump videos that I make, I do it partly because of how I feel, but then also it's because it's so hard to find positive videos about that person. And similarly, it's hard to find people talking about American pride and being proud of the country. It's not an easy thing to find. So the fact that Andrew Schultz decided, let's just have a quick conversation about American pride and what makes the country so beautiful and great, I just found that to be absolutely inspiring. So I'm going to springboard that into a video of Tucker talking about why America's great. There is a pastor from a channel called Wise Disciples, I believe. He talks about holding the same values, how that holds the country together, and what happens when we no longer have the same values. Then we're going to go on to Jocko talking about getting through divisiveness. Kind of touches on the same thing of values and how to get through that divisiveness. And then we're going to touch on Tim Kennedy, who just goes on to a absolute great rant about, well, the way that I frame it when I hear it is the American attitude. He's talking about the Second Amendment and some stuff. It's pretty great. Now, don't forget about the channel that I got, Coach Colin Media. Hit that subscribe button. We're almost at 1,000. This is where I break away from the Rogan content. If that's what you've been looking for, there it is. Let's get into the Rogan clip. And I got it right here.
Buy land. Yeah, that is peculiar. Not just that.
And it's so fast. Why do I always do that? Why do I always put it so fast, guys? Why can't I just slow down? Let's go.
We let them sell us routers, sell us networking equipment because it's cheaper.
I thought we stopped that.
Well, they still have a lot.
I thought that was the whole Huawei thing where we're
that
like,
was only Huawei. That was only Huawei. But if you look at, like, Mike Baker laid this out to me.
Yeah.
All of the cell towers and all the stuff that's around, like, military bases, a lot of the equipment has been provided by China.
I can't fathom.
They provide it cheaper.
I can't fathom that our military would be purchasing technological equipment from
the same military that made Rachel Levine the first female admiral. You don't think? You don't think they could fuck that up too? The same military that made that fucking bag stealer, that bald-headed bag stealer who was stealing shit. That was a person in charge of nuclear waste disposal.
And are they an expert in any way?
Oh no, they're an expert in wearing women's shoes.
That's it.
That's all you have to be. That's all you have to be. You just got to check the right box. We're in the DEI program now, bro, and a lot of that is also funded by China. A lot of it in Russia as well. And they look, Yuri Bezmenov talked about this in the 1980s, how they've infiltrated our education institutions.
Yeah.
And then they're slowly turning us into Marxists, and they're slowly having us erode our faith in democracy and our pride in the country.
Yeah, pride does seem like it's at an all-time low. It's a really disappointing thing.
Yeah, but I feel like it's like waves. Like things go
pendulum
back and
shift.
forth.
Yeah, pendulum shift 100%, but it is one of those things
there's
where
overcorrections, there's recorrections.
Yeah.
You know, like I think that's the defund the police thing too. That's the overcorrection.
Yeah.
Right? And then the no cash bail, that's the overcorrection.
Yeah.
And then people are like, oh my God, look at all this chaos and crime. We gotta
shift back.
And hopefully they do. And hopefully they figure that out.
But what about pride? How do we instill pride? How do we make people proud to be part of the American experience? It's not to say that all of us are not. There's definitely a lot that are. But how do we reinstill that?
I think one of the things is a simplistic answer, but one of the things is American manufacturing and American-made things.
Yeah, what are we making?
Have people support American-made companies and give people real jobs where they get, just because something costs less because it's made in a country where people get paid nothing doesn't mean you should buy that.
Yeah.
And if you could buy something that maybe costs more, but it gives people a living wage and health care and they have families and they could buy a house, that's what you should be buying.
Why are you proud to be American?
It's a great fucking place.
Yeah, it is. It's the best.
It's the cultural center point of the whole planet.
It's the only place you can live all 12 months.
Really?
Where else would you live for 12 months? Name another country.
Bali.
Fuck out of here. You can go rainy season in Bali walking around in fucking rainbow sandals like Bert Kreischer.
How much does it
You're
rain?
out of your mind.
Does it rain a lot?
In Bali?
Yeah.
Yeah, you don't get that green without the rain.
Right. So you get like typhoons and shit?
Yeah, you're not living
You don't want
there.
tropical storms, son.
You don't want it.
You don't want tropical
Especially
storms in your life.
without infrastructure.
Yeah, but you don't want to live in Kansas either when the tornadoes come.
But you have the opportunity to not live there.
That's true.
That's the thing about America. You can live
November to April, the wet season.
Yeah, fuck that.
Often called the rainy season or monsoon season
Yeah, we're not
due to its
doing it.
heavy storms and downpours.
We're not doing it.
Okay.
What I'm trying to say is like there isn't another country that you can live all 12 months of the year.
You go to Abu Dhabi, they
You
make
don't-
it rain.
in the fucking
they
sun.
make it rain.
But think about it, in the summer in July in Abu Dhabi,
Right.
there's
It
no
was so
fucking
hot
way.
there that the Saudis would come to LA for relief.
Of course, they
Call
go
it
to London.
Saudi
Who goes
summer.
to fucking London?
Yeah.
For weather.
Right.
So it's like this is the only one. I genuinely, I cannot think of another one. 12 months.
The whole country. Yeah. And if
Where
you
else?
live in Phoenix, you can live the whole country all year round.
But you can move around here.
Yeah.
You can live.
True.
If you have the money, you can live in New York for these months. You go
Right.
to Florida. You go to whatever. There's an option.
Right.
You know what I mean?
That's a good point.
You can't live anywhere else. But that's not the pride thing for me. I think the pride thing is like, I truly believe you can be the best version of yourself here. And I think anybody else in the world can be the best, most successful version of themselves here. And that's why I'm proud to
Yeah.
be American.
Well,
You can reach your full potential in this country.
it's a fun place.
Hey, there's a lot of fun places.
Yeah.
But can you reach your full potential in these other places? They took fucking Jack Ma and they brought him into a basement
Yep.
when he got too powerful in
Well,
China.
he talked a little shit.
He thought he was bigger than the system.
Yeah.
So they shut it down. They saw what was happening to our tech billionaires here, and they're like, hey, we're not going to let that fucking shit happen here. You're going to the basement. Here, I'm not saying Joe Rogan isn't going to be successful no matter where he goes. But you're going to have fucking issues if you're in China coming and having this much influence and a podcast and do it. You're going to have a talk.
Yeah.
You're going to have some basement talks.
Yeah.
But in this fucking country, you can be the greatest version of yourself. And I don't know if there's another country that offers that opportunity.
And more importantly, anyone that's trying to stop that is un-American. If you're trying to
stop
censor
someone's
people's
greatness.
speech,
Yes.
if you're
Just-
trying to stifle people's growth,
And
because they
Americans
don't,
will fight for you because of it. It happens.
Yes.
This is the hit piece thing. When we see the hit piece, it tears at like our American identity. Even if you don't admit you are, there's a part of you that's going, whoa, whoa, this person's trying to be great. And we're all here because we're trying to be great, or our family came here to be great. And this person's trying to be great, and the world is trying to stop that. Fuck them.
it's some people are trying to stop that.
Some
Yeah.
people are trying to stop that. But we have animosity for those people that are trying to stop greatness because it is a core tenet here.
Yes.
It's,
Yeah.
You can be great. An individual can be great here.
Yeah.
And I think that's a really special thing that we kind of lose here, that we lose sight of. But it is what makes me proud. Maybe it's because my mom's not from here and she came here and she felt like she had all this opportunity. And it was like, you can't tell my mom it's not the greatest country in the world. So I'm kind of like, I grew up with that. And there, of course, there's tons of problems. But this idea that like you can really achieve.
You're always going to have problems when you have human beings.
Yes.
And there's no perfect solution. Like universal basic income isn't the perfect solution. Welfare is not the perfect solution. There's no perfect solution to fix all that ails us. But at least here, you can go from the bottom to the top.
You can go for it.
Yeah.
You can really go for it. And you're not like.
Start from the bottom now.
Facts. In some places, like, you might have the aptitude to go from the bottom to the top, but the culture will be oppressive.
Yeah.
And I'm not even talking about third world. I'm not talking about China. I'm talking about there are places where there's a system where, like, hey, you're working class. How dare you try to not be working class?
Yeah, that's what my friends in England say. My friends in
My
England.
mom's from Scotland. That's what it was.
Yeah.
It's
They
like, how
come
dare
over
you
here.
try to be great? Mm-hmm. And here it's like, wait, you're not trying to be great?
Right.
Why aren't you trying to be great? You have the opportunity to be great.
Right.
And when we see greatness, we support it.
Yeah.
That's not to say that we don't have jealousy and animosity, but there still is a version of it here where it's like, nah, that motherfucker's great. And I am excited by that person's greatness.
If you're a winner.
If
But then you're also going to have a bunch of people that are just happy when you fall.
that's
because,
humans.
Yeah.
That is humans. We have it too.
Yeah.
But there's not a cultural oppression
Right.
that exists for greatness.
Exactly.
The place
Exactly.
is built to go to the top.
Yep.
And it makes me proud. For me, I wish more people would grab onto that idea.
Yeah. And it's all of us, too. That's what's so crazy about the idea that the American flag, the symbol, the American flag is offensive.
It's the best flag.
But it's so crazy that
Yeah.
that's all of us. That's even the good, the stuff that you think is good about America. Even if you're like the hardcore, the most hard, far left, hippie, fucking anarchist, like
Yeah.
you are a part of America.
Yeah.
Your ideas are America
Yeah.
as well. That flag is yours too.
And we kind of need them.
We need everybody.
We need that back and forth. We need
need
that pendulum
balance.
to swing. We do.
We need balance.
Because you see what happens when there's just people existing in that echo. You saw what happens in fucking San Francisco or even LA. You see like an idea permeate, and then a very lax law or a lack of enforcement of that law create a culture that people are now not happy with. Like
Yeah.
if you ask the average person in LA or San Francisco, they're like, maybe we need some rules now. I think rules would be okay.
Yeah.
We could punish some crimes. It's okay.
Yeah.
When you exist in the echo chamber, you're fighting for different sides of liberalism. You don't have that balance where these people are yelling at these people and we kind of end up in here.
Right.
And that's healthy.
Right.
That little back and forth is healthy.
Right.
And yeah, I don't know. I get stoked off the American experience, but it does make me sad when I feel like everybody's upset about it. The right thinks it sucks. The left thinks it sucks. Everybody just thinks it sucks. And it's like, I don't know, man.
Well, I just think there's a lot of problems that exist today that weren't problems decades ago.
For example?
Particularly social issues with the impact of social media has thrown this country into a fucking turmoil.
What do you mean?
It's a force that we didn't anticipate. The amount of echo chambers that exist, the amount of people that gather up together in these groups, and they have full confirmation bias. They only believe one side. They disregard all evidence from the other side.
Yeah.
They dig their heels in. They want to be on the right side of history. They want to win. If Donald Trump wins, it's a threat to democracy. Joe Biden's a criminal. He's a threat to democracy. Our whole life is at stake with this election. And so if you're on the wrong side, you've been co-opted by the bad people. And there's just so much tension that exists today where you can't have a difference of opinion with your neighbors. Where it used to be, if your neighbor was a Republican and you were a Democrat, nobody gave a shit. Yeah. Like, what's up, Bob? Maybe he would get annoying. He'd want to talk to you about fucking Watergate or something. Like, I gotta go, bro. I gotta go. But it wasn't anti-American. It wasn't as divisive. He wasn't the main problem in the world.
Yeah.
You know, he wasn't a Nazi.
Yeah. He just
wanted to hold on to his money.
Exactly. He just thought you were a little bit of a pussy.
Yeah.
And you just thought he was maybe a little racist.
Yeah.
But you still barbecued.
Yeah.
It wasn't that crazy.
You said hi. You waved to each other when you were in the driveway.
Yeah, and now you think it's so divisive because of the internet. The echo chambers are created, and it's this good versus evil mentality on both sides. So how dare you hang out with someone who's evil?
Yeah.
What does that make of you?
It's crazy. And then also, like, people dig their heels in and put fucking political signs on their front lawn. My mom used to do that. When she lived in Florida, she had, like, Hillary Clinton signs on her front lawn, and the people kept stealing them. I'm like, Mom, take those down.
Wait, what?
It's the worst when your parents get into some weird political stuff. You know, I think I've told the story before. I had my Trump shirt on, as I do. My mom's like, that Donald Trump. She's like, don't wear that shirt outside. That Donald Trump's causing trouble. And I was like, wait, what? Mom, do you know who I am? What are you talking about right now? I'm like, how's he causing trouble? She's like, just causing trouble. Had no answer. I was like, ma'am, you don't have an answer for what you're saying. You're just going around saying he's causing trouble. Disappointing. Very disappointing. Then I told her some stuff about Biden, and she was like, don't trust either of them. I was like, all right, whatever, Mom. You know, it's interesting when they get into that whole thing. But I love the conversation, you know. The first thing I'll say right away, 12 months of the year. A lot of people don't think about that. A lot of people who are just in Boston, they're in Jersey, maybe they're in Florida. I had a friend of mine, he was in Florida, loves it there, and then he just said, you know what, let's do Idaho. And he just went to Idaho. He's like, I want to just experience some different seasons. He's like, I'm tired of summer all the time. Now I'm over here. He goes, everybody's very Christian, very conservative. He's like, that's what I'm all about. And I was like, man, amazing. I'm going to go visit him sometime. Probably going to do a hunt or something like that. Probably going to do some vicious workouts. The guy's like Cam Hanes, basically. It's not talked about enough because you can't do that in Canada. The best place that Canada has is British Columbia out west. And that place, it rains all the time from what I hear. I have a lot of friends in comedy and stuff. They talk about it's raining every few days. It just starts raining. So that's not good either. Where else could you do it? Europe? Kind of, but when winter comes, it comes. There's few places that are escaping the winter completely. But in America, and you know what, Tucker, I have a clip of Tucker talking. He talks about it more, how beautiful America is. I couldn't find that clip. But he's so right. He's like, you have no idea if you would just explore America, how much beauty you'll see. He was talking about how so many times we're wrapped up in going to other places, you know, cross the water, this, that. He's like, there's so much. He's like, if you just get in a car and go, there's so much that you'll see. And it's very, very true. But, you know, it is true what he said about Andrew Schultz. Like, pride is at an all-time low. Man, I talk about this all the time, and I'm going to move on to from the Tucker stuff. But only country where everybody is taught to be ashamed. The white people are taught to be ashamed of their past that they have nothing to do with. It's not even their past. It's like ancestors' past. They're taught to be ashamed that, you know, a lot of their family had slaves. Black people are taught to be ashamed of the fact that they came from slavery, which is not true. You don't have to look at yourself as coming from slavery. Then the people who came over legally, they're taught to be ashamed that they're not fully American, but like they go through the process and they do everything, they become a citizen, and then they have that shame. Maybe it's the shame of not being able to speak English, you know, as best as, you know, a natural born American, but it's the only place where everybody is taught to be ashamed. Everybody is taught to be a victim. Everybody is taught to be oppressed, and everybody's taught to think that it sucks. And it's interesting. It's very interesting. Even when somebody who crosses the border, like millions have, even when they come and stay for a while, they start talking about how it sucks. Like, it's just, It's crazy. It's the best place in the world. Just so you know, I know a lot of you are like, oh, what about Dubai and this and that? Or Jamaica, the islands. It's the best place in the world. People don't get it. They don't have freedom of speech in Canada. That's not a thing. People are getting locked up. And listen, it's happened here a little bit, but it's getting fought against. People are getting locked up. 4,000 people have been locked up in the UK for something that they tweeted. It's bad in other places. Not horrible, but this is the best place. That's why the WEF is like, what's going to happen is America's not going to be the superpower. There's going to be multiple superpowers. Because every nation, any person with nefarious intentions in these organizations, they all know America is the last stand. Canada toppled like a pile of leaves. Easy. No problem. Wind blew and everything's everywhere. Everyone knows America is the last stand. It really is. I know some people are like, nah, man, it's terrible here. And nah, it's just horrible. But you don't know what you're talking about. You have no clue what you're talking about. I'm telling you. Let's get into Tucker Carlson. He's going to be talking a little bit about why he feels America's great. Let's go.
There is a huge amount going on right now, as you know, really a torrent of news, historic amounts. To begin tonight, we are going to ignore all of it. We've never done that before. This is a news show brought to you on a news channel. But on this second Friday after the election, we'd like to take a 20-minute break from developments. So many things seem so completely screwed up right now that it can be overwhelming. And over time, it's also misleading. If you pay too much attention to what's happening, you can easily conclude that America is a rotten country. But that's wrong. It's not. America is still the best there is. Two things about America make it great: the country and its people. This is a truly beautiful place. That's the first thing. If you're absorbed in your phone all day, it's easy to forget that. But look around. It's stunning. Switzerland has the Alps, Zimbabwe has Victoria Falls, but multiply that by an entire continent and you've got what we have, America. From the islands of Puget Sound to the islands in Casco Bay, to the Rockies and the Badlands and the Upper Peninsula and the Appalachian Mountains in between. Spend a day hiking through the Shoshone National Forest in Wyoming. You might not see another person. How can a place so gorgeous be so empty? We've got a lot of those here. Wake up in Big Sur, California some morning. The smell of redwoods and salt air will change you. You'll feel things you inherited from your ancestors, coming from places the modern world cannot touch. We are blessed to live in a place like this, more blessed than we acknowledge. No matter what happens next, no matter who becomes the president, now or in the future, nothing can diminish the dignity of an eastern white pine towering above the spruce in a New England forest. All of it is ours to enjoy. Thank God.
I like it. I like what he has to say. He's touching on what I'm touching on, and the fact that this was a few years ago when he made this segment, and the fact that he's still saying this, I love that. It means that he wasn't just talking just to talk. It's actually how he feels, because he's still holding these values years later. And yeah, it's just so true. Just think about it. Go explore. I'm always fascinated, and I used to be one of these people from the time I was a kid up until I was older, like 22 years old. I never left my vicinity, my small town. I never left. I was just one of those people. And I met some people and we ended up traveling outside of the country. And I did that like 2-3 times. I've done it with my wife once or twice. I think once. I still haven't gone to many places, but you really should. It does change you. Exactly what he just said. It really does change you. I would bring up too, when Schultz brought up pride being at an all-time low, whether you know it or not, and you might have your different reasons for feeling it, that is a part of the demoralization. Demoralization, when Joe brought up Yuri Bezmenov, that was a big part of the process. It was demoralization, destabilization, crisis normalization. That's how it worked. And that's a part of the demoralization, is to make you not proud of where you're from. Because then it's very easy to destabilize a place. Because it's like, you don't care about it. You don't care about it. Like, I remember hearing this this guy, cancel this. He's a great creator and he's a great journalist. But when he was talking about TikTok being owned by China, and he had this talking point of, who cares if China has access to our stuff? Who cares about that? You know, and then he's like, what do you think they're going to do? Make some anti type of government? And he's like, I'll make that content myself. I'll make the stuff that like erodes democracy and society myself. And I was like, why? But it's not because he's a bad person and he's not a Democrat or anything, but he just has the mindset of, screw this system, you know, and you know, a lot of people do, and I do to even some extent, but you have to remember, you don't want everything here to topple, right? You want a few small sections of people in power to do the right thing. You don't even want them completely gone. You know, like, well, let's just talk from a very good-hearted place. You don't want to see harm come to anybody. You just want everybody to do the right thing. If everybody in office right now would do the right thing, like Trump said this about Joe Biden. He was like, if he would just be a great president, I wouldn't have to do this. He goes, I'd rather see him just be a great president than see what I'm seeing and have to run and have to do all this. And it's very true. Think about everybody you see in office where you're like, man, I wish that person wasn't in office. If they just started doing the right thing by the people day in and day out, who would really have a problem with them? You know, what would the issue be then? I don't know. Demoralization, man. It's a real thing. I really encourage anybody, Yuri Bezmenov, just go and watch that interview. If you want to hear about what I'm talking about, if you find his interview, if you find the one that's about an hour long, it's about an hour, some odd minutes. If you go all the way to 52 minutes to the end, you'll hear exactly what I'm talking about. He gets deep into the whole demoralization, destabilization. He gets into how all of it works and what it actually does to a society on a psychological level. All right, let's go into the next clip. This is from a guy named Wise Disciple. Just found this guy. Right now, he's just talking about values. He's going to be reading a little bit from the Declaration of Independence. Let's go.
The unanimous declaration of the 13 United States of America. Okay, what do we say? We hold these truths to be self-evident. What truths? These values. All men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Okay, what are these things? They're values. These values are what the entire United States had in common and used as a basis to write this declaration in the first place. Right? The unanimous declaration of the United States. That's what we said. We stand on these values. By the way, the Declaration of Independence is the announcement to not only King George, but to the world that we are a new nation. And this status, this national status is based on shared values. Can you see that? That's the answer. And if that's the answer, well, then here's the question. What happens when we no longer share the same values? I think we're all watching the answer play out right in front of our very eyes, aren't we? Right? We now, as a society, clash over everything. We clash over music, movies, politics, definitely politics, right? We clash over science now, gender, right? Like basically everything we could possibly consider clashing on, we do. Why? Because we don't share the same values any longer. And when that happens, the facade of our nation begins to crack. It begins to crumble. And given enough time and enough tribalism and anger and rage and corrupt government officials, right? And everyone seeking their own way, we will absolutely collapse. That's a no-brainer.
It's interesting what he's talking about because that kind of touches on something that Joe Rogan and Schultz were talking about. And the question is, who's trying to stop the greatness? Like Andrew mentioned it. Joe went into a little bit of, it's only certain people who are trying to stop people from being great. Who are those people? Well, it's the people who no longer hold American values. The people who, there's so many clips of this, so many interviews of this, where you can see there's a lot of people who live in America that want to see it fall. They benefit from everything that it has to offer, and yet they still think that it should fall because it's racist or like all just the fact of, oh, who wrote the Declaration? Who wrote the Constitution? Oh, they were slave owners and this and that and all these things. And it's like these weird ways of trying to discount those people and then also discount the document. When people do that, it's because they don't hold the values anymore. Because if you hold the values, you can look at it, even as a black person, you could look at it and be like, that's me. Oh, well, they weren't talking about you back then. Well, that's good. It's 2024. So that's me. That's me. I'm the person who's created equal. Oh, they had slaves. That time. But now, documents still exist, still followed. They're talking about me and you and your mom and your sister. And there's a lot of people who just kind of push these values away. And it's because they're trying to discount the people who put them in the first place. Even right up to the fact of God-given rights. There's people who are even trying to push aside God-given rights. And it's like, at that point, what are you saying? What are you trying to push away? God-given rights? What are you actually saying when you try to push away a God-given right? Are you trying to push God out of the equation? I think we all know that that's very true when we really look around. I'm not going to show it, but I saw this wild video. I think it was the Chapel of Archangel Michael. It was some church in the basement. They had one of those drag shows. Listen, you want to do that, I get it. They look terrible to me, but for some reason, some people like it, but it was in the church. What's going on? You know what I mean? When you do things like that, what are you trying to do? When you have a parade like they had in Brazil, which I can't wait to talk about Brazil. I'm going to do that on the other channel. There's a whole lot to say about Brazil. They're having parades of mocking Jesus, mocking Christianity, mocking religion in general, upholding the devil. You start seeing it in America. You see it in the concerts. You see it in the Sam Smiths and the Taylor Swifts and all of these different artists that are all embracing this very demonic culture and getting younger people to embrace this demonic culture. And there's a brand of sacrifice that's going on, and it's happening through virtue signaling. Those people don't hold the values anymore. And like he said, some people feel like they see things collapsing. It's because a lot of people don't hold the values anymore. And then there's some people, arguably an even bigger section of people, who don't know the values. There's a rule. I've done a video about it. There's a rule. I think it's called the 10-80-10 rule, and it's about survival. And it talks about how 10% of people are just going to survive. They're going to know what to do. They know exactly how to do it. Or no, it was like 20-60-10, whatever it is. But let's just say 10% are going to survive no matter what. They know exactly what to do. And then there's 10% on the other side who are not going to make it. They do not know what to do. They fall apart. They're in the burning building. And instead of going down a flight of stairs, they go up a flight of stairs. They're just not thinking. And then there's the whole middle that can go either way based on who they're influenced by on either side. And I think that holds true when it comes to the values as well. That if more people spoke about values, which is why I'm making this video, and I wish there was, funny I'm going to say this, I wish there was a Pride Month where everybody made videos about American Pride. That'd be really cool to see, I think there already is a Pride Month, but this is a different type of thing I'm talking about. But I think that same thing holds true with the values. There's a lot of people in the middle that don't know. And if you can inform them properly, they would know and they would hold those values dear, especially if they could see the rest of the world. Let's get into Jocko.
Some people talk about the divisiveness, in America right now. And, you hear people say, oh, it's never been this bad before. Well, you know what? It has. It's been freaking infinitely worse. And the fact that you could go through a divisiveness so incredibly violent. I mean, this is our war where we just it was a slaughter. Just think about that last podcast, the things that the descriptions he's giving of those battlefields. But if we as a nation can go through that insane violence, and at the end of that, At the end of that, at the end of killing each other, wholesale slaughtering each other, at the end of that, the very men that fought each other, that killed each other, those very men can stand and salute each other and respect each other and decide that we should stay a union. If we as a country can get through that, then I only can hope that we can move past some of the bickering that we have today and hold up this flag and unify all of us together to continue to provide a place in the world with freedom for all.
Yeah, man. It's funny because what he just said kind of touches on what Andrew Schultz said, kind of butts heads with it a little bit. He's talking about getting through divisiveness, and that's something that definitely needs to happen. But then there's also the other side where Schultz was talking about how when both sides kind of go head to head, when they kind of bump heads a little bit, that's actually healthy. And I think Jocko's right, and I think what Andrew is talking about when he talks about that being healthy is it's healthy when it happens in good faith. You know, like debates are terrible when both sides are just angry at each other and they're throwing insults at each other. Like Candace Owens and Destiny, when they were like in this like debate forum, you know, Candace Owens was kind of throwing these, you know, personal attacks at him, and he did the same thing. She called him like a high school kid or something, and he's like, well, you're acting like a catty mean girl, you know, like they were just kind of, it was very odd to see, especially because Destiny invites these people into his house. So it's like, the person's in your house, you got to offer them water after you're done doing this with each other. It was very interesting. But in a real debate, I would even liken it to debates that I have with my friends. We were going back and forth, a good friend of mine, he's like a brother to me. We're going back and forth on the Israel-Palestine thing. Or even more recently, we were going back and forth on the Daily Wire thing with Candace Owens. He actually introduced me to Candace Owens, and now he's just like, I want nothing to do with her. She's terrible. I'm glad she's gone. And we went back and forth for a while. We actually love each other, like family. So it's always finding common ground. We're always going to find common ground, and we're always going to be able to talk the next day. Like he was the person, like I have this play button. He was the person. I was like, I'm going to do something when I get this play button. I'm going to do something to it. And he's like, don't you dare, man. He's like, that's important. He's like, that's a huge, he's like, don't do it. He's actually the one that made me like, he's like, pay that with some reverence. He's like, don't be disrespectful of that. I was like, okay, cool. I was looking at it like, you know, big company. I'm like, I'm going to show them. But he was like, no. He's like, you should respect that. He's like, that's your achievement. But again, we always just come to this understanding of one another, and then it's always love afterwards. And I have many friends that I can do that with. Not many debates are that way. If they are, it is healthy, like Schultz is talking about. But other than that, Jocko's correct, where you have to get through this divisiveness and this bickering in bad faith. But again, I will go back to values. There's some people, and Jordan Peterson's talked about this. I'm sure you've seen it. I've seen it many times in videos that I've watched. Somebody will go to a right-leaning type of rally, think of a Trump rally, and ask questions. And the people in the crowd will not shout him down. They won't poke at him, this, that. They will start engaging in conversation. When you go to something, you know, on the opposite side of things, it's very left-leaning. They will put umbrellas in your face. They will sound air horns around you. They might even get a little physical. There's so many wild things that end up happening. And these people never want to engage in civil discourse. And I won't blanket it. I'm sure there's some, for sure. But a lot of what you see is they do not want to engage in civil discourse. Jordan Peterson even talks about it. Obviously, he's not a rough aggressive, like violent person or anything. He's asked many people to be on his show that are left-leaning so they can talk about their arguments and why they feel certain ways about certain things. And they always say no. They will always say no. And then inversely, he will go to people who are right-leaning and want to talk to them, and they always say yes. So again, it goes back to those values. If you don't hold those values, then there will always be this unhealthy divisiveness. Let's go to the last video. Tim Kennedy. I call this one the American attitude. It's a quick one, but I like what he has to say here.
Warrant. That happened this year. Probably not as secure as that.
Very sorry, ladies and gentlemen. You guys know me. Way too fast all the time. Let's go from here.
Got subpoenaed to...
No, I didn't.
Right.
This was something that happened this year. I'm just giving an example of if anybody else has. So this Second Amendment thing, nobody gives me authority to this inherent right for me to protect myself and my family. The government is not saying that I get to protect me and my family. This is my God-given right to protect me and my family. This is not somebody has access to a program to give me the tool to protect my family. I just have this right, and I should have access to any tools that I deem necessary to protect myself, my family, my property, and even more by extension, freedom. So against a tyrannical government, but government overreach, it's not just like hunting, sports, and me and my family. This is hunting, sports, me and my family. And if the government gets too big and gets too nosy into my life, this is what happened in 1776. Like, we were pretty cool until we weren't cool. And then you guys started asking too much of us. And then we said no. And then we killed all of you. I know this is a hard thing.
It's a very difficult day for me. I've survived 2 July 4ths since I've been here. I actually wore a t-shirt that said, "Happy Treason Day, ungrateful colonials." Yes. I wore that on July 4th last year.
Yeah. It's a hard thing to wrap yourself around unless this is what pumps in America, should be pumping in Americans' blood. It's like, we are rebels. We have always been rebels. You cannot tell me what to do. There's nothing that you can say to me. Every single one of those beautiful amendments and that fantastic, one of the best pieces of words ever put together in history is the Constitution. And it says that those are our God-given rights, and nobody has a right to control those. The freedom of speech, freedom of religion, freedom of the press, like overreach to you coming into my home, like due process, the right to bear arms, all of those things are my rights. So like, no, I don't want a system. I don't want a fingerprint. I don't want facial recognition. I want a cannon. And I want a Gatling gun, minigun attached to my motorcycle. And I want a tank, and I should be able to have it.
I'm pretty sure the Black Rifle guys...
and I should be able to have it. Absolutely hilarious. But, I just figured I just wanted to make a video about that. I heard that conversation with Joe and Schultz, and I was like, why not find some clips of people, talking about the good because you can find so much in almost every conversation about what needs to be fixed and what's going wrong. And I make videos about it all the time too. I talk about the border all the time. I've made many videos on the border. So, but there should be some videos out there to counter that. Again, the one nation that's taught to just be ashamed up and down. Africans aren't ashamed in slavery in Africa. They're not ashamed of that part of slavery. They're not really like that. And they're not really taught that they're oppressed constantly by anybody who's white. South Africa is a different place. There's a different thing going on there. They have their own way of butting heads, but for the most part, they're not taught to be ashamed of all of that. You go to Europe, maybe barring Germany, maybe. They're not taught to be ashamed of the slave trade. You go to UK, it starts seeping in a little bit because they got a lot of woke values there in the government. But for the most part, in America, you were taught to be ashamed of being black, ashamed of being white. It's never going to stop. You always have to pull on that thing, whether you're pulling on it to show people why you're oppressed, or you're pulling on it to show people why you have white guilt. And it's crazy. Dana White, I should have grabbed the clip, but Dana White said, he goes, what other place are you're going to hear somebody say they're Italian American or they're Greek American or, you know, African American, and he was just like, you're American. He goes, that's what it is. And he was talking about other nations and how proud they are. And I would love to see that happen more in America. So that's why I made the video. Like, subscribe, share. Got a second channel. Subscribe to that as well. Other than that, I'm out.